The blood pooled beneath her skirts as she collapsed on the dusty main street of Salida, Colorado, and every person who had gathered for Sunday services turned to stare at the young woman who had just tumbled from the stagecoach with a knife wound in her side. It was June of 1878, and the mountain town nestled in the Arkansas River Valley had seen its share of trouble, but nothing quite like this. Beatrice Ramsey clutched her bleeding wound and tried to stand, her honey-colored hair falling loose from its pins, her green traveling dress torn and stained. The stage driver was already racing away, having collected his fare and wanting no part of whatever criminal activity had befallen his passenger. "Someone help her!" called out a woman's voice, but the crowd remained frozen, uncertain. Reverend Marcus Caldwell stepped forward from the white wooden church, his black coat pristine, his expression stern as he looked down at the young woman struggling to her feet. "What happened here? What brings you to our town in such a state?" Beatrice pressed her hand against her side, feeling the warm blood seeping through her fingers. "Please," she gasped. "I need help. He tried to kill me. I ran." "Who tried to kill you?" the Reverend demanded, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd. "And who are you?" "My name is Beatrice Ramsey. I was engaged to a man in Denver, Thomas Whitmore. He was not what I thought. He was cruel, violent. When I discovered he was involved in cattle rustling and worse, I tried to leave. He said no woman walks away from him. He came at me with a knife last night. I fought him and ran. I took the first stage out." The Reverend's face hardened. "You are engaged to be married, and you ran from your intended? A woman's place is with her betrothed, even in difficult circumstances." Beatrice felt her legs wobbling, the loss of blood making her dizzy. "He would have killed me. That is a serious accusation against a man who is not here to defend himself," Reverend Caldwell said, his voice booming now. "What kind of woman travels alone, covered in blood, making such claims? I will not have our town harbor a woman of questionable character." A tall figure moved through the crowd then, his boots thudding against the wooden boardwalk. Isaac Irons was 26 years old, a cowboy who worked the ranches in the valley, known for his honest work and quiet demeanor. His dark hair fell to his collar beneath his worn hat, and his blue eyes took in the scene with quick assessment. He had been heading to church when the commotion started, and now he pushed through to see what was happening. "She is bleeding," Isaac said, his voice calm but firm. "Whatever the story is, she needs a doctor." "Stay out of this, Irons," the Reverend snapped. "This woman has brought scandal to our church steps. She admits to running from her intended husband. What decent woman does such a thing?" Isaac looked at Beatrice, really looked at her. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with pain and fear, but there was something else there too, a fierce will to live, a desperate hope. He saw the way she trembled, not with cold but with the effort of staying upright. He saw the genuine terror in her expression when she spoke of the man she had fled. "A woman who wants to live," Isaac said quietly. "That is what kind of woman does such a thing." "She has disgraced herself," Reverend Caldwell continued, warming to his subject now, playing to the crowd. "She has broken her vows, fled her responsibilities. She comes here without family, without proper escort, making wild accusations. I tell you all now, no decent man would have her. She has ruined herself by her own actions." The words hung in the air like a sentence of death. In 1878, in a small mountain town, a woman without reputation was a woman without future. Beatrice felt tears sting her eyes, not from the physical pain, but from the crushing weight of the Reverend's words. She had survived Thomas's attack. She had escaped, and now she would be cast out anyway, left to die or worse. Isaac Irons felt something shift inside his chest. He had lived a simple life, working cattle, saving his money, keeping to himself mostly. He had never been one for grand gestures or public displays, but looking at this woman, this stranger who had fought so hard to survive, hearing the Reverend condemn her for having the courage to save her own life, something in him rebelled against the injustice of it all. "Then I will have her," Isaac said, his voice cutting through the murmuring crowd. Every head turned to him. The Reverend's face went red. "What did you say?" "I said I will have her," Isaac repeated, louder now. "If no decent man will marry her, then I will. Right here, right now. I will marry her on these church steps today." Beatrice stared at him, this stranger with kind eyes and a strong jaw, and wondered if she was hallucinating from blood loss. "You do not even know me. Isaac looked at her steadily. I know enough. I know you fought to live. I know you had the courage to run from a man who would hurt you. I know you need help, and I can give it, if you will have me. This is absurd, Reverend Caldwell sputtered. You cannot simply marry a woman you do not know. Can you perform the ceremony or not? Isaac asked, his tone brooking no argument. You said no decent man would have her? I am offering to marry her, to give her my name and my protection. Unless your words were just empty judgment, and you do not actually care about doing what is right in the eyes of God. The Reverend's mouth opened and closed like a fish. The crowd watched with rapt attention. This was better than any sermon they would have heard inside. Beatrice felt her knees starting to give way. I am bleeding, she whispered. Isaac moved quickly, catching her before she fell. His arms were strong, steady, and for the first time since she had fled Denver, Beatrice felt something like safety. He held her gently, supporting her weight. We need to do this now, Isaac said to the Reverend, before she loses any more blood. Marry us, and then I will take her to Doc Henderson. Dr. Christopher Henderson pushed through the crowd, his medical bag in hand. He was an older man with gray hair and a no-nonsense manner. That woman needs immediate attention. Whatever you are all arguing about can wait. It cannot wait, Isaac said. Reverend Caldwell has declared her unmarriageable. I am offering to wed her now, to give her the protection of my name. Then you can treat her wounds. Doc Henderson looked between them, understanding dawning. Reverend, if this man is willing to marry her, you should perform the ceremony. The girl is hurt and scared. Let her have some dignity and security. The Reverend looked around at the crowd, seeing the mixture of shock, curiosity, and growing sympathy on their faces. He had painted himself into a corner with his own harsh words. If he refused now, he would look like a hypocrite and a coward. Very well, he said stiffly. But do not blame me when you regret this rash decision, Irons. Isaac kept one arm around Beatrice, holding her upright. She looked up at him, her face so pale it was almost translucent. You do not have to do this, she said softly. I am a stranger. I bring trouble. Trouble already found you, Isaac replied. I am just offering a way forward, but the choice is yours. I will not force you into anything. If you would rather take your chances alone, I will respect that and still make sure you get to the doctor. Beatrice searched his face, looking for deceit or hidden cruelty, the things she had learned to watch for with Thomas. But all she saw was honesty and a quiet strength. This man was offering her a lifeline, asking nothing in return except that she accept it. Yes, she whispered, I will marry you. Isaac nodded once, then turned to the Reverend. Do it. Reverend Caldwell opened his prayer book with shaking hands, his face still flushed with anger and embarrassment. The crowd pressed closer, not wanting to miss a moment of this unprecedented event. A marriage on the church steps, between strangers, with the bride bleeding and the groom a simple cowboy. Dearly beloved, the Reverend began, his voice tight, we are gathered here in the sight of God and these witnesses to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony. Isaac kept his arm around Beatrice, feeling how she trembled against him. He could feel the warmth of her blood seeping through his shirt where she pressed against him. Every moment mattered now. The Reverend rushed through the traditional words, clearly wanting this spectacle finished. Do you, Isaac Irons, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? I do, Isaac said firmly, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd. And do you, Beatrice Ramsey, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? Beatrice looked up at Isaac, this stranger who had just changed her entire life with a few words. I do, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but clear enough for all to hear. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you man and wife, the Reverend said quickly. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder. Isaac looked down at his new wife. May I? He asked softly. She nodded, understanding what he was asking. He leaned down and kissed her gently, briefly, a seal on the vows they had just spoken. Her lips were cold, and he could feel how close she was to losing consciousness. Doc, he said, pulling back, I need to get her inside now. Dr. Henderson was already moving. "Bring her to my office. It is just down the street." Isaac lifted Beatrice into his arms, cradling her against his chest. She weighed almost nothing, or perhaps the adrenaline coursing through his veins made her seem so. He carried her down the steps, through the parting crowd, and followed the doctor down the dusty street to a small building with a sign that read, "Henderson Medical Practice." Inside, the doctor directed him to lay Beatrice on an examination table. Isaac did so carefully, then stepped back, giving the doctor room to work. "I will need you to wait outside," Doc Henderson said, already cutting away the blood-soaked fabric of Beatrice's dress. "No," Beatrice said, her hand reaching out. "Please, do not leave." Isaac looked at the doctor, who shrugged. "If she wants you here, you can stay, but you need to stand over there and stay out of my way." Isaac moved to the head of the table, where Beatrice could see him. She reached up and grabbed his hand with surprising strength. "Thank you," she whispered. "Save your strength," he told her gently. Dr. Henderson worked quickly and efficiently, cleaning the wound, examining its depth. "It is not as bad as it looks," he said after a few minutes. "The knife hit a rib, which probably saved her life. It is a flesh wound, but it bled heavily. I will need to stitch it up." He administered a dose of laudanum to ease the pain, then began the careful process of stitching the wound closed. Beatrice gritted her teeth, squeezing Isaac's hand so hard he thought she might break his fingers, but she did not cry out. Isaac watched her face, admiring her strength even as he saw the pain etched in every line. When it was done, the doctor bandaged her side with clean white cloth and stepped back. "She needs rest, fluids, and no strenuous activity for at least 2 weeks. The wound should heal cleanly if it does not get infected. I will give you some carbolic acid solution to clean it daily." "Where does she need to rest?" Isaac asked, the reality of the situation suddenly hitting him. He had just married a woman he did not know. He had a small cabin on the ranch where he worked, a single room with a bed, a table, and a stove. It was not much, but it was his. "Your place, I assume," the doctor said, "since you just married her." Isaac nodded slowly. "My cabin, then. It is not fancy, but it is clean and safe." Beatrice had closed her eyes, the laudanum starting to take effect. She looked so young and vulnerable lying there, her face pale against the white pillow the doctor had provided. Isaac wondered what he had gotten himself into, marrying a stranger on impulse. But looking at her now, he felt no regret, only a strange sense of rightness, as if this was exactly what he was supposed to do. "Can she be moved?" Isaac asked. "Give the laudanum a few more minutes to fully work, then yes, but be gentle, and make sure she stays still once you get her settled." Isaac waited, watching as Beatrice's breathing evened out, the lines of pain in her face smoothing as the medicine took effect. When the doctor nodded, Isaac carefully lifted her again, cradling her against his chest. "I will check on her tomorrow," Doc Henderson said. "And Irons, you did a good thing today, whatever people say." Isaac carried his new wife out into the bright June sunshine. The church crowd had dispersed, people heading home to their Sunday dinners with a story to tell. Isaac walked steadily toward the edge of town, where the ranch lay, his arms never faltering in their hold on Beatrice. His cabin sat about a mile from town, on the property of the Double J Ranch where he worked. It was a simple structure, built sturdy against the mountain winters, with a small porch and a single window. Isaac managed to get the door open while still holding Beatrice, and he carried her inside. The interior was spare but clean, a bed in one corner, a potbelly stove, a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs, shelves with supplies and books. Isaac laid Beatrice gently on his bed, the only bed, and covered her with a quilt his mother had made before she died. He stood back and looked at her, really taking in what he had done. He was married now, to a woman named Beatrice who had kind eyes and more courage than most men he knew. A woman who had been attacked and condemned, and who still held her head up and made her choice. Isaac pulled one of the chairs over beside the bed and sat down, watching her sleep. He would need to ride out to the ranch headquarters and explain to his boss that he had just gotten married and would need a few days off to tend to his injured wife. He would need to get supplies, more food, women's clothing. He would need to figure out how to share his small space with another person. But for now, he just sat and watched over her, this stranger who was now his wife. Beatrice woke slowly, fighting through the fog of laudanum and pain. For a moment she panicked, not knowing where she was. But then she saw the rough wooden beams of the ceiling, felt the soft quilt over her, and remembered the church steps, the cowboy with kind eyes, the hasty wedding. She turned her head and saw Isaac sitting in a chair beside the bed, his hat on the table, his dark hair slightly mussed. He was reading a book, but he looked up immediately when he sensed her movement. "How do you feel?" he asked, setting the book aside. "Sore," Beatrice admitted, "but alive. Thank you for that." Isaac shook his head. "You saved yourself. You were the one who ran, who fought, who survived. I just offered you a name." "It was more than that," Beatrice said softly. "You gave me safety when I had none. You stood up to that reverend and all those people. You married a stranger and made yourself responsible for me. That was not nothing." Isaac was quiet for a moment. "I could not stand by and watch them condemn you for saving your own life. It did not sit right." Most men would have walked away. "Then most men are cowards." Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes, the emotional weight of everything catching up to her. "I do not even know what to say. I do not know how to thank you." "You do not need to thank me," Isaac said. "We are married now. We will figure out what that means as we go." Beatrice looked around the small cabin, seeing it properly for the first time. It was modest but neat, everything in its place. A man's space. "This is your home." "It is our home now," Isaac corrected gently. "I know it is not much, just one room, but it is solid and warm, and it is ours." "I have no belongings," Beatrice said suddenly, the realization hitting her. "Everything I owned is back in Denver. All I have is this torn, bloody dress." "I will ride into town tomorrow and get you some things," Isaac said. "There is a general store with ready-made dresses. They may not fit perfectly, but they will do until we can arrange something better." Beatrice looked at him, this man who had so quickly and completely changed her life. "Isaac," she said, testing his name on her tongue. "Isaac Irons." "That is me," he said with a small smile. "And you are Beatrice Irons now." "Beatrice Irons," she repeated. It felt strange, taking on the name of a man she had known for mere hours. But it also felt like armor, like protection. She was no longer Beatrice Ramsey, the woman who had fled her violent fiancé in disgrace. She was Beatrice Irons, a married woman with a husband who had proven himself honorable. "Are you hungry?" Isaac asked. "I have some stew from yesterday. It is not fancy, but it is filling." Beatrice realized she was hungry, desperately so. She had not eaten since the previous morning, before Thomas attacked her. "Yes, please." Isaac went to the stove and stirred up the fire, heating the pot of stew that sat waiting. The smell of beef and vegetables filled the small cabin, making Beatrice's stomach growl audibly. "You should sit up slowly," Isaac advised. "Doc said you might feel dizzy from the blood loss." Beatrice pushed herself up carefully, wincing as the movement pulled at her stitches. Isaac was there immediately, helping her, propping pillows behind her back. His hands were gentle but sure, and Beatrice found herself studying him. He was handsome in a rugged way, with strong features and those striking blue eyes. His hands were calloused from hard work, but his touch was careful. Isaac brought her a bowl of stew and a spoon, along with a cup of water from the pump outside. Beatrice ate slowly, savoring each bite. The stew was simple but good, seasoned with salt and herbs, the beef tender and the vegetables soft. "You are a good cook," she said. Isaac shrugged. "A man learns to cook when he lives alone. Otherwise he starves or goes broke paying for restaurant meals." "How long have you lived alone?" "Since I was 19, Isaac said. "My parents died of cholera 7 years ago. They had a small farm in Kansas. I sold it and came west, looking for work. Ended up here in Salida, working cattle for the Double J Ranch." "Do you like it here?" Isaac considered the question. "I do. The mountains are beautiful. The work is honest. The people are good mostly. Except for our reverend, apparently." Beatrice smiled faintly. "He was quite adamant about my unworthiness." "He was wrong," Isaac said flatly. "A man who would attack a woman with a knife is not a man worth staying with. You did the right thing running." "Thomas was charming at first," Beatrice said quietly, staring into her stew. "My father was a shopkeeper in Denver. He died 2 years ago, and I was left alone. Thomas courted me properly, or so I thought. He seemed successful, respectable. It was only after we were engaged that I started to see the truth. The way he treated people, he thought beneath him. The way he would fly into rages over small things. And then I overheard him talking with his associates about stolen cattle, about threatening ranchers. I confronted him, told him I could not marry a criminal. He said I did not have a choice, that I had agreed to marry him, and I would. When I tried to leave, he came at me with the knife. Isaac felt anger burn in his chest, hot and fierce. If he ever comes looking for you, he will have to go through me. Beatrice looked up at him, seeing the determination in his face. I pray he does not. I pray he thinks I died somewhere on the road. But if he does come, I will not let you fight my battles alone. I can shoot. My father taught me. Good, Isaac said. A woman should know how to protect herself. But you are my wife now, and I protect what is mine. The possessiveness in his words should have frightened her, after Thomas. But coming from Isaac, it felt different. It felt like safety, like partnership. They sat in silence for a while, Beatrice finishing her stew and Isaac tending to the fire. The sun was setting outside, painting the mountains in shades of gold and purple. Through the small window, Beatrice could see the peaks rising against the sky. "It is beautiful here," she said softly. "It is," Isaac agreed. "Winter can be harsh, but summer is as fine as anywhere on earth." "Isaac," Beatrice said, and he turned to look at her. "I know this marriage was not what you planned. I know I am a burden you did not ask for. But I will try to be a good wife to you. I can cook and clean and mend. I can learn whatever else you need. I will earn my place here." Isaac crossed the small space and sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to jostle her. "You are not a burden, Beatrice. You are my wife, and you do not need to earn anything. You already showed your worth by surviving. The rest we will figure out together." Beatrice felt tears slide down her cheeks, the kindness in his words breaking through the walls she had built up to survive the last terrible day. "I am sorry. I do not usually cry." "You have earned the right to cry," Isaac said gently. "You were attacked. You fled for your life. You were condemned by a self-righteous preacher, and you married a stranger. That is more than most people experience in a lifetime, let alone one day." Beatrice laughed through her tears, the sound watery but genuine. "When you put it that way, it does sound rather overwhelming." Isaac reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and wiped the tears from her cheeks with his thumb. The gesture was tender, careful, and Beatrice leaned into his touch without thinking. "You should rest," Isaac said. "You need to heal. We can talk more tomorrow." "Where will you sleep?" Beatrice asked, looking around the one-room cabin. "I will make a bedroll on the floor," Isaac said. "It will be fine." "That is not right. This is your bed in your home. I cannot displace you." Isaac smiled. "Our home, and you are injured. You need the bed. I have slept in far worse places, believe me. Ranch work sometimes means sleeping under the stars, with rocks for a pillow. The floor of my own cabin is luxury by comparison." Beatrice wanted to argue more, but exhaustion was pulling at her, the laudanum and the emotional toll of the day combining to make her eyes heavy. "Very well, but once I am healed, we will have to figure out a better arrangement." "We will," Isaac agreed. He stood and began pulling blankets from a chest, making himself a bedroll near the stove. Beatrice watched him through drooping eyelids, this stranger who was now her husband, and felt something warm and unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Hope, perhaps, or the first tiny seed of something more. She fell asleep watching him, feeling safe for the first time in longer than she could remember. The next days passed in a gentle rhythm. Isaac rode into town each morning to check in at the ranch and to buy supplies. He returned with simple cotton dresses for Beatrice, undergarments, a brush for her hair, and other necessities. He brought fresh food and flowers from the meadow, which he placed in a jar on the table. Dr. Henderson came every other day to check Beatrice's wound. It was healing well, no sign of infection, the stitches holding cleanly. Beatrice grew stronger each day, able to sit up for longer periods, then to walk carefully around the cabin. She watched Isaac, learning his habits and his nature. He was a quiet man, not given to unnecessary words, but when he spoke, it was with thought and consideration. He was gentle with her, always asking before he touched her, always giving her space and privacy as much as the small cabin allowed. On the 5th day, Beatrice felt well enough to cook. She insisted despite Isaac's protests, and she made biscuits and gravy for breakfast. Isaac ate with obvious appreciation, and Beatrice felt a warm glow of satisfaction. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" Isaac asked, sopping up gravy with his biscuit. "My mother taught me before she died," Beatrice said. "I was 12 when we lost her to pneumonia. After that, I kept house for my father and ran the shop with him." "You must miss him." "I do, every day. He was a good man, kind and patient. He would have liked you, I think." Isaac felt something tighten in his chest at her words. In less than a week, this woman had become a part of his life in a way he had never expected. He found himself thinking about her constantly, worrying about her when he rode out to the ranch, hurrying back to check on her. He found himself noticing small things, the way she smiled when she was amused, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking. That evening, they sat on the small porch together, watching the sun set over the mountains. Beatrice had wrapped herself in a shawl against the cool evening air, and Isaac sat beside her, their shoulders almost touching. "Tell me about yourself," Beatrice said. "I know so little about you." "There is not much to tell," Isaac said. "I am a simple man. I work hard, I save my money, I try to be decent." "You are more than that," Beatrice said. "You are the man who saw someone in trouble and helped without thought for yourself. You are the man who stood up to a whole town and a preacher. You are the man who has been nothing but kind to me, asking nothing in return." Isaac was quiet for a long moment. "My father taught me that a man's character is shown in how he treats those who cannot help themselves. You were hurt and alone, and those people were ready to cast you out. I could not live with myself if I had walked away." "Your father sounds like he was a good man." "He was, tough but fair. He worked himself nearly to death on that farm, trying to make it prosper. In the end, it was cholera that took him and my mother both. Within days of each other, I buried them in the Kansas soil they loved and left. I could not stay there without them." Beatrice reached out and took his hand, the first time she had initiated touch between them. Isaac looked down at their joined hands, her fingers small and pale against his tanned, calloused palm. "I am sorry you lost them," Beatrice said softly. "I am sorry you lost your father too, and that you had to go through what you did with Thomas." They sat in silence, hands clasped, watching the sky turn from gold to purple to deep blue. Stars began to appear, bright and clear in the mountain air. "Isaac," Beatrice said, "what do you want from this marriage? From me?" Isaac considered the question carefully. "I want you to be happy. I want you to feel safe. I want to build something good with you, if you are willing. I know this started as a rescue, but I hope it can become something real." Beatrice felt her heart beat faster. "I want that too. You have been so kind, so patient. I have not been able to stop thinking about how lucky I am that you were there that day, that you cared enough to help." Isaac turned to look at her, their faces close in the gathering darkness. "Beatrice, I need you to know something. I will never force you to do anything you do not want to do. We are married in name, but I will wait until you are ready for this to be a real marriage in every way. And if you are never ready, I will accept that too." Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes again, moved by his words. "You are a rare man, Isaac Irons. I am just a man trying to do right by his wife." Beatrice leaned forward slowly and kissed him, a gentle press of lips that held promise and gratitude and the first stirrings of genuine affection. Isaac returned the kiss carefully, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. When they pulled apart, both were breathing a little faster. Beatrice smiled. "I am ready for this to be real. Maybe not tonight, because I am still healing, but soon. I want this marriage to be real." Isaac smiled back, his blue eyes warm in the starlight. "Then we will make it real, together." 2 weeks later, Dr. Henderson pronounced Beatrice fully healed. The scar would remain, a thin line on her side, but the wound had closed cleanly, and there was no sign of infection or complication. "You are a very lucky woman," the doctor said as he packed his medical bag. "Another inch to the left, and that knife would have punctured something vital. As it is, you should have no lasting problems." After the doctor left, Beatrice stood in the middle of the cabin and looked at Isaac. They had grown closer every day, talking long into the evenings, learning each other's stories and dreams. Isaac had told her about his hopes to one day own his own ranch, a small spread where he could raise cattle and horses. Beatrice had told him about her love of reading, how her father had always made sure she had books even when money was tight. They had kissed several times, growing more comfortable with each other, but Isaac had been true to his word. He slept on his bedroll on the floor and gave her all the time and space she needed, But now, standing there with the late June sunshine streaming through the window, Beatrice knew she was ready. More than ready. She had fallen in love with her husband, this quiet, honorable man who had saved her life and asked nothing in return. "Isaac," she said, and something in her tone made him look up from the harness he was mending. "Yes? I am healed now, completely." Isaac set down the harness, his eyes searching her face. "That is good news." Beatrice crossed the small space between them, her heart pounding. "I meant what I said on the porch that night. I want this marriage to be real. I want to be your wife in every way." Isaac stood slowly, his hands gentle as they came to rest on her waist. "Are you certain? There is no rush, Beatrice. We have all the time in the world." "I am certain," Beatrice said firmly. "I love you, Isaac. I know it has only been 2 weeks, and I know this all started in a strange way. But I love you. You are the best man I have ever known." Isaac felt his heart swell at her words. "I love you too. I think I started falling in love with you that first day, when I saw how brave you were, how strong. Every day since has only made me more certain." He kissed her then, deep and thorough, and Beatrice kissed him back with all the emotion that had been building between them. When they finally pulled apart, both were flushed and breathing hard. "Make me your wife," Beatrice whispered. Isaac lifted her carefully, mindful of her recently healed wound, and carried her to the bed. He laid her down gently and joined her there, and they came together with tenderness and passion, making their marriage real and true in every sense. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Beatrice's head on Isaac's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "No regrets?" Isaac asked, his fingers trailing through her hair. "None," Beatrice said. "This is where I am meant to be, with you." The summer passed in a golden haze of happiness. Beatrice proved to be an excellent cook and housekeeper, but more than that, she became Isaac's partner in every way. She learned about ranching and cattle, asking questions and paying attention. She learned to ride, starting with a gentle mare that belonged to the ranch, and soon she was accompanying Isaac on some of his rides across the range. The people of Salida slowly warmed to the strange couple, seeing how devoted they were to each other. Even Reverend Caldwell eventually had to admit that the hasty marriage had turned out well, though he never apologized for his harsh words on the church steps. In September, Beatrice realized she was pregnant. She told Isaac one evening over dinner, her hands shaking slightly as she set down her fork. "I am going to have a baby," she said simply. Isaac stared at her for a moment, then a smile broke across his face like the sun rising. "Truly?" "Truly, I am about 6 weeks along, I think. The baby should come in late April or early May." Isaac came around the table and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "A baby, our baby." Beatrice laughed, joy bubbling up inside her. "Are you happy?" "Happy does not begin to cover it," Isaac said. "I am thrilled, amazed, terrified." "Join the ranks," Beatrice said. "I am terrified too, but also excited. We are going to be parents, Isaac." That winter was hard, with deep snows and bitter cold, but the little cabin stayed warm and cozy. Isaac made sure Beatrice was comfortable and had everything she needed. He read to her in the evenings, books they borrowed from neighbors or bought on trips into town. They talked about names and plans, about what kind of parents they wanted to be. In February, a stranger rode into town, asking questions about a woman named Beatrice Ramsey. Isaac heard about it at the general store and immediately rode home, his heart pounding. Beatrice was kneading bread dough when he came through the door, and she looked up in surprise at his early return. "What is wrong?" she asked, seeing his face. "Someone is in town asking about you, about Beatrice Ramsey." Beatrice felt her blood run cold. "Thomas. Maybe. Or someone he sent. I did not get a good description, but we need to be careful." Isaac went to the shelf above the door and took down his rifle, checking that it was loaded. Then he handed Beatrice his pistol, which she took with steady hands. "If anyone comes here who is not me or someone you know and trust, you shoot first and ask questions later," Isaac said. "Understand?" "I understand. But what about you? What if he finds you in town? Then I will deal with it, but you and our baby are what matter most. Stay inside, keep the door barred, and do not open it for anyone but me." Isaac kissed her hard, then rode back into town, determined to find out who was asking questions and why. He found the stranger at the saloon, a weaselly man with greasy hair and nervous eyes. Isaac walked up to him directly. "I hear you are looking for someone," Isaac said. The man looked him up and down. "Maybe I am. What is it to you?" "The woman you are looking for is my wife, so it is everything to me." The man's eyes widened slightly. "You married her? Beatrice Ramsey?" "Beatrice Irons," Isaac corrected coldly. "She is my wife. We married last June. Whatever business you think you have with her, you can forget it." "I am just here on behalf of Thomas Whitmore," the man said, trying for a placating tone. "He wants to make sure his former fiancée is all right. He was worried when she disappeared." "She disappeared because he tried to kill her," Isaac said, his voice low and dangerous. "She had a knife wound to prove it. So you can go back to Thomas Whitmore and tell him that if he or anyone associated with him comes near my wife again, they will have me to deal with, and I promise you, that will not go well for them." The man took a step back, seeing the steel in Isaac's eyes. "Now hold on. I am just doing a job. Your job is done. Beatrice is safe, she is married, and she wants nothing to do with Thomas Whitmore. You can also tell him that she is under the protection of the law here in Salida. Sheriff Parker knows the whole story. If anything happens to her or to me, Thomas will be the first person investigated." This was not entirely true. Isaac had not spoken to the sheriff about Thomas, but he would do so immediately. It was a good bluff, though, and the man seemed to believe it. All right, I will tell him. No need for threats." "It is not a threat," Isaac said. "It is a promise. Now get out of this town and do not come back." The man left quickly, mounting his horse and riding out of Salida at a fast clip. Isaac watched him go, then went directly to the sheriff's office and explained the situation. Sheriff Tom Parker listened carefully and agreed to keep an eye out for any further trouble. When Isaac returned home, Beatrice threw herself into his arms, the pistol safely set aside. What happened? Isaac told her everything. Beatrice listened, her face pale but her jaw set. "Do you think he will come himself?" she asked. "I do not know, but we are ready if he does, and everyone in town knows now. You are not alone anymore, Beatrice. You have me, and you have this whole community." Beatrice nodded, feeling the fear recede slightly. She was not the same woman who had fled Denver alone and terrified. She was stronger now, protected now, loved now. Thomas never came. Whether the messenger delivered Isaac's threat, or whether Thomas simply decided Beatrice was not worth the trouble, they never knew. But as the weeks passed and no further trouble arose, they began to relax. In late April, Beatrice went into labor. Isaac rode for Dr. Henderson, while a neighbor woman stayed with Beatrice, helping her through the contractions. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next morning, but finally, as the sun rose over the mountains, their son was born. Isaac held his son with shaking hands, staring down at the tiny red face and shock of dark hair. "He is perfect," he whispered. "He is," Beatrice agreed, exhausted but glowing with joy. "What should we name him?" They had discussed many names over the winter, but in that moment, only one felt right. "Joseph," Isaac said. "After my father." "Joseph Irons," Beatrice said, testing the name. "I like it. Joseph it is." Baby Joseph was healthy and strong, with a good pair of lungs that he used frequently. Isaac proved to be a devoted father, walking the floor with his son when he cried, changing diapers without complaint, staring at the baby with wonder in his eyes. That summer was one of the happiest of their lives. Beatrice recovered from the birth, and they settled into the rhythms of life with an infant. Isaac continued working at the ranch, but he had been saving his money carefully, and he began to look at properties for sale, small parcels of land where he could start his own spread. In August, he found the perfect piece, 50 acres along the river, with good grass and water, bordered by mountains. It was not much, but it was a start. He bought it with the money he had saved, and they began to plan their future. They would build a house larger than the cabin, with room for more children. They would start with a small herd of cattle and grow from there. It would be hard work, but they were not afraid of hard work. As fall came and the aspens turned gold on the mountainsides, Beatrice stood on their new land, holding Joseph in her arms, with Isaac's arm around her shoulders. "Can you believe it?" she asked. "A year ago, I thought my life was over. I was running from a man who wanted to kill me, bleeding and alone. And now look at us. We have a son, we have land, we have each other." Isaac kissed the top of her head. I knew from the moment I saw you that you were special, that you were worth fighting for. I am just glad you took a chance on a cowboy with more heart than sense." Beatrice laughed. "You had plenty of sense. You saw someone who needed help, and you helped. That is not foolishness. That is honor." They stood together, watching the sun set over their land, their son cooing softly between them, and felt the deep contentment of a dream coming true. The years that followed were filled with hard work and joy in equal measure. They built their house with the help of neighbors, a sturdy 2-story structure with a wide porch and large windows to let in the mountain light. Isaac built up his herd slowly and carefully, buying quality cattle and breeding them well. Beatrice kept the house and the books, managing the finances with a sharp eye and good sense. Joseph grew into a strong, happy boy, with his father's blue eyes and his mother's determination. When he was 3, he gained a little sister, a dark-haired beauty they named Margaret, after Beatrice's mother. 2 years later came another son, Daniel, and finally, when Beatrice was 32, their youngest, a daughter named Sarah. The Irons Ranch prospered, becoming known for quality cattle and honest dealing. Isaac gained a reputation as a fair man and a hard worker, and Beatrice was respected for her kindness and sharp intelligence. Their children grew up healthy and loved, running wild across the 50 acres with dogs at their heels and the mountains as their playground. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaac took Beatrice back into Salida, to the white church where they had been married on the steps. The church was quiet and empty on a weekday afternoon, and they stood on those same steps, holding hands. "Do you remember?" Isaac asked. "Every moment," Beatrice said. "I remember being so scared, so lost. And then you stepped forward and changed everything." "Best decision I ever made," Isaac said. "Mine too," Beatrice agreed. "Marrying you on these steps, bleeding and terrified, not knowing who you were or what would happen. It was the bravest thing I ever did, and the best thing." Isaac pulled her close and kissed her, long and sweet, and Beatrice kissed him back with all the love and gratitude and passion that had only grown deeper over the years. When they pulled apart, Beatrice smiled up at her husband. "Take me home, Isaac." They rode back to their ranch together, their hands clasped, their hearts full. The mountains rose around them, eternal and strong, and the sun shone bright on the land they had built together. That night, after the children were asleep, they sat on their porch together, as they had done so many times before, watching the stars come out. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if I had not been there that day?" Isaac asked. Beatrice shook her head. "I do not waste time on what-ifs. You were there. You did step forward. That is all that matters. You gave me a life I never dreamed possible. You gave me love and safety and a home. You gave me our children. You gave me everything." "You gave me just as much," Isaac said. "Before you, I was just drifting, working and saving, but not really living. You made me want to build something, to create something lasting. You made me want to be better, to be worthy of you." "You were always worthy," Beatrice said softly. "From the moment you stood up to that preacher and offered yourself as a solution, you were worthy. You are the best man I know, Isaac Irons, and I am grateful every single day that you are my husband." They sat in comfortable silence, the years of partnership and love, between them making words unnecessary sometimes. Inside, their children slept safely in their beds. Around them, their land stretched out, a testament to their hard work and dedication. Above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, bearing witness to their love. Beatrice thought back to that terrified young woman who had tumbled from the stagecoach, bleeding and alone, certain that her life was over. That woman could never have imagined this future, this happiness, this deep and abiding love. The preacher had said no decent man would have her, but Isaac had proven him wrong. Isaac had seen past the scandal and the fear to the strong, brave woman beneath. Isaac had offered his name and his protection without hesitation, asking nothing in return, and in doing so, he had given her everything that mattered: a partner, a home, a family, a love that would last a lifetime. As the night deepened around them, Beatrice leaned her head on Isaac's shoulder and closed her eyes, feeling perfectly content. Whatever challenges the future might bring, they would face them together, as they had faced everything since that fateful day on the church steps. They had built something beautiful from desperate beginnings, and it would endure. Their love would endure, and that was all that mattered. Years continued to pass in the mountain valley, seasons turning like the pages of a beloved book. The Irons' children grew, each developing their own personalities and dreams. Joseph, the eldest, showed a natural talent for working with horses, and often helped his father with the more difficult animals. Margaret had her mother's quick mind and love of books, often found reading in the shade of the cottonwood tree by the house. Daniel was the adventurous one, always climbing higher, riding faster, pushing boundaries in ways that made Beatrice's heart race with worry. And little Sarah, the baby, was a perfect mix of both parents, sweet and gentle like Isaac, but with Beatrice's fierce determination when she set her mind to something. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Isaac took on a few hired hands as the work became too much for one man, and he became known throughout the valley as a good employer who treated his workers fairly. Beatrice expanded her interests beyond the household, helping to establish a small school in Salida so that all the children in the area could receive proper education. She taught reading and arithmetic 2 days a week, finding deep satisfaction in watching young minds blossom. When Joseph turned 16, a telegram arrived from Denver. It was from a lawyer's office, informing Beatrice that Thomas Whitmore had died of a heart attack and that certain legal matters regarding her broken engagement needed to be settled. The engagement ring she had left behind when she fled, along with some other items, were being held for her. Beatrice stared at the telegram for a long time, feeling a complicated swirl of emotions. Relief, certainly, that the man who had tried to kill her was no longer a threat, but also a strange kind of sadness, not for Thomas himself, but for the waste of a life spent in anger and cruelty. Isaac found her sitting on the porch, the telegram in her hand. "Bad news?" he asked, concerned. "Thomas is dead," Beatrice said simply, handing him the telegram. Isaac read it carefully, then sat down beside her. "How do you feel?" "I do not know," Beatrice admitted. "Relieved, I think, but also strange. He was such a large shadow over my life for so long, and now he is just gone, like he never mattered at all." "He mattered because he forced you onto that stagecoach to Salida," Isaac said thoughtfully. "If he had been a better man, you never would have come here. We never would have met. So, in a twisted way, I suppose I should be grateful to him for being exactly the wrong man for you." Beatrice smiled despite herself. "Trust you to find the silver lining. Yes, I suppose that is true. His cruelty led me to you, and I would not change that for anything. Do you want to go to Denver to settle these legal matters?" Beatrice shook her head. "No. I will write to the lawyer and tell him to dispose of the items as he sees fit. I do not need any reminders of that time. Everything I need is right here." Isaac took her hand and squeezed it gently. They sat together in silence, the afternoon sun warm on their faces, and Beatrice felt the last shadow of her old life finally lift. She was free, completely and totally free, and the life she had built with Isaac was solid and real. That evening, they gathered the family together, and Beatrice told the children about Thomas, about what had happened before she came to Salida. The older children knew pieces of the story, but this was the first time she had told it in full. "So you see," she said, looking at each of their faces, "sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead to the best things. If Thomas had not attacked me, I never would have run. If I had not run, I never would have come to Salida. And if I had not come to Salida, I never would have met your father. I never would have had any of you." "Papa saved you," Sarah said, her eyes wide. She was 8 now, at the age where she loved stories of bravery and romance. "He did," Beatrice agreed. "When the preacher said no decent man would have me, your father stepped forward and proved him wrong. He married me on those church steps and brought me here and gave me a life beyond my wildest dreams." "Because Papa is a hero," Daniel declared, and Isaac laughed, embarrassed. "I am no hero," Isaac protested. "I just did what any decent person would do." "That is exactly what makes you a hero, Papa," Margaret said quietly. "You did the right thing when others would not. That is the definition of heroism." Isaac looked at his eldest daughter, seeing the wisdom beyond her years, and felt his heart swell with pride. These children, this family, this life, it was more than he ever could have hoped for when he stood on those church steps 14 years ago. As the children eventually dispersed to their evening activities, Isaac and Beatrice remained at the table, holding hands across the worn wood. 14 years, Beatrice said softly. "Married on the church steps to a stranger, and now look at us. 4 children, a successful ranch, a whole life built together. "Would you do it again?" Isaac asked. "If you could go back, knowing nothing more than you knew that day, would you say yes to me again?" Beatrice did not even hesitate. "In a heartbeat, every single time. You saved me, Isaac, but more than that, you love me. You built a life with me. You gave me everything I ever wanted and things I did not even know I needed. So, yes, I would say yes 1,000 times over." Isaac leaned across the table and kissed her, gentle and loving, the kiss of two people who had weathered storms together and come out stronger for it. The years continued to roll forward, bringing changes and challenges, but also joy. Joseph married at 22, bringing home a sweet-natured girl named Emma from a neighboring ranch. They built a house on the Irons property, and Joseph became a full partner in the ranch operation. Margaret went away to Denver to attend a teaching college, fulfilling her dream of becoming an educator. She wrote letters home regularly, full of her studies and her adventures in the growing city. Daniel, true to his adventurous nature, signed on with a trail drive when he was 18, determined to see more of the West. Beatrice worried constantly, but Isaac reminded her that a young man needed to find his own way. Daniel returned 2 years later, full of stories and experience, ready to settle down and help with the ranch. Sarah grew into a beautiful young woman with a gift for music. Isaac bought her a piano, hauling it all the way from Denver, and her playing filled the house with melody. She taught music to the children in town and brought joy wherever she went. When Beatrice turned 45, Isaac took her on a trip to Denver, just the two of them. It was the first time she had returned to the city since fleeing 16 years earlier. So much had changed. The city was bigger, more developed, with electric lights and streetcars. But Beatrice felt no fear, no anxiety. She was a different person now, confident and loved, with Isaac at her side. They visited Margaret at her college and attended one of her lectures. They shopped in the fine stores and ate at elegant restaurants. They stayed in a hotel with running water and modern conveniences. But through it all, Beatrice found herself eager to return home, to their ranch in the mountains, to the life they had built. "Denver is impressive," she said to Isaac as they rode the train back to Salida. "But it is not home. Home is our ranch, our family, our mountains." "I feel the same," Isaac agreed. "I am glad we came, glad we had this adventure. But I will be happy to get back to our regular life." They returned to find their household in good order, Joseph and Emma having managed everything perfectly in their absence. The children gathered around, eager to hear about the trip, and Beatrice told them stories while Isaac unpacked their bags. That night, lying in their bed with Isaac's arms around her, Beatrice reflected on how completely her life had transformed. She had gone from a desperate, wounded woman with no future to a matriarch of a thriving family, a respected member of the community, a woman who was deeply and completely loved. "Isaac," she whispered into the darkness. He replied, already half asleep. "Thank you for everything, for all of this." Isaac pulled her closer. "You never have to thank me. Loving you has been the greatest privilege of my life." Beatrice smiled in the darkness and closed her eyes, utterly content. The years continued to pass, bringing grandchildren and new challenges and deeper happiness. Joseph and Emma had 3 children, giving Isaac and Beatrice the joy of being grandparents. Margaret married a fellow teacher and settled in Denver, visiting regularly with her husband and eventually their 2 children. Daniel married a rancher's daughter and started his own small spread adjacent to the family property. And Sarah, their youngest, married the new doctor who came to Salida, a kind young man who adored her. Isaac's hair turned gray, and Beatrice's honey-colored locks developed silver threads. But their love only deepened with time. They had weathered everything together, illness and injury, harsh winters and financial setbacks, the normal trials of life. Through it all, they remained each other's constant, their bond unbreakable. On their 30th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. The house was full of laughter and music, children running through the rooms, multiple generations gathered around the long table Isaac had built years ago. After dinner, Isaac stood and tapped his glass, calling for attention. The room quieted, all eyes turning to him. 30 years ago, Isaac began, his voice still strong despite his 56 years. I stood on the steps of the Salida church and did the most impulsive thing I had ever done. I married a woman I did not know, a woman who was hurt and scared and being condemned by the very people who should have helped her. I did it because it felt right, because I could not stand by and do nothing. But I never imagined, not in my wildest dreams, that it would lead to this." He gestured around the room, at the children and grandchildren, at the life they had built. "Beatrice," he said, turning to his wife, "you have made me the happiest man alive. You have given me children who make me proud, grandchildren who bring me joy, and a life full of love and purpose. Every single day for 30 years, I have thanked God that I was in that churchyard, that I heard what was happening, that I had the courage to step forward, because stepping forward brought me you, and you brought me everything." Beatrice stood and went to him, tears streaming down her face. "You saved me, Isaac. In every way a person can be saved. You gave me hope when I had none, love when I thought I was unlovable, a future when mine seemed over. You are the best man I have ever known, and I love you more today than I did 30 years ago, which I would not have thought possible." They kissed, long and sweet, while their family applauded and cheered. Their grandchildren made exaggerated gagging sounds at the mushy display, which made everyone laugh. The celebration continued late into the night, with music and dancing and storytelling. Isaac watched his family with deep satisfaction, seeing the legacy he and Beatrice had created, from desperate beginnings on church steps to this, a whole dynasty of love and family. As the years continued to advance, Isaac and Beatrice gradually stepped back from the active management of the ranch, turning more responsibility over to Joseph and Daniel. They spent their days enjoying their grandchildren, tending a garden, taking long walks around the property they loved. When Isaac was 62, he had a health scare, a problem with his heart that left him weakened for several months. Beatrice nursed him with the same determination she brought to everything, refusing to let him give up or give in. Slowly, he recovered, though he was never quite as strong as before. "I am not ready to leave you yet," he told her one afternoon as they sat in the sunshine, him in a chair and her beside him, holding his hand. "Good," Beatrice said firmly, "because I am not ready to let you go. We still have years ahead of us, Isaac Irons. We have more grandchildren to spoil and more sunsets to watch together." Isaac smiled, loving her fierce spirit. "Then, I suppose I had better stick around." And he did. Years more of quiet happiness, of watching their family continue to grow and prosper. Margaret's children grew up and started families of their own. Sarah's medical practice thrived, and she and her husband became pillars of the Salida community. The Irons Ranch continued to flourish under Joseph and Daniel's management, becoming one of the most respected operations in the valley. When Isaac was 71 and Beatrice 67, they celebrated their 43rd wedding anniversary with a quiet dinner, just the two of them. Their children had offered to host a big party, but they had declined, preferring to spend the evening alone together. 43 years, Beatrice said, marveling. "Almost half a century married to you." "Best 43 years of my life," Isaac said. His hair was completely white now, his face lined with age, but his blue eyes were still as clear and kind as the day she met him. "Mine too," Beatrice agreed. Her own hair was silver now, and her face showed the years, but she was still beautiful to Isaac, more beautiful than ever because she was his. "Do you remember what you said to me that first week?" Isaac asked. "You said you would try to be a good wife, that you would earn your place." "I remember." "You earned your place in the first moment I saw you," Isaac said, "by being brave enough to survive. Everything after that has just been bonus. But Beatrice, you have been more than a good wife. You have been my partner, my best friend, my greatest love. You have been the making of me." Beatrice felt tears slide down her cheeks. Even after all these years, Isaac could still move her to tears with his words. "And you have been all of that and more to me. You gave me a life, Isaac, a real life, full of love and family and purpose. I was lost, and you found me. I was broken, and you helped me heal. I was alone, and you gave me a family. Everything good in my life came from that moment you stepped forward on the church steps." They held hands across the table, two old people who had loved each other through decades, through triumphs and trials, through the ordinary and extraordinary moments that make up a life. "I would do it all again," Isaac said softly. "Every single moment, every challenge, every hardship, every joy, all of it, exactly the same, just to end up here with you." "Me too," Beatrice whispered. "Always and forever, me too." They finished their dinner and moved to the porch, their favorite spot, to watch the sun set over the mountains. The sky turned brilliant shades of orange and pink and purple, nature's painting displayed just for them. "Beautiful," Beatrice murmured. "Yes," Isaac agreed, but he was not looking at the sunset. He was looking at his wife, the woman who had transformed his life, and thinking that no sunset could ever be as beautiful as she was to him. As darkness fell and stars began to appear, they remained on the porch, comfortable in the silence of long companionship. Around them, their land stretched out, the ranch they had built together. Inside, their house held 43 years of memories. Beyond, their family lived their lives, carrying forward the legacy of love that Isaac and Beatrice had established. The preacher had been wrong, so completely, utterly wrong. He had said no decent man would have her, but Isaac had proven that a truly decent man would do exactly that. He would step forward when others stepped back. He would offer help when others offered judgment. He would choose love over fear, compassion over condemnation. And from that choice, from that single moment of courage on the church steps, had come a lifetime of love, a family, a legacy, a story that would be told for generations, about the cowboy who married the wounded stranger and built a life with her that was more beautiful than either could have imagined. As the night deepened around them, Beatrice leaned her head on Isaac's shoulder, just as she had done countless times before. His arm came around her, strong despite his age, protective and loving. And they sat together, watching the stars wheel overhead, grateful for every moment they had been given. Their love story had started with blood and fear and desperate circumstances, but it had become something transcendent, something beautiful, something eternal. It had become the foundation on which an entire family was built, the bedrock on which a life of meaning and purpose was established. The preacher had said no decent man would have her, but Isaac had proved that the most decent man, the best man, would not only have her, but would love her, cherish her, build a life with her, and thank God every day for the privilege. And as Beatrice drifted off to sleep that night, secure in Isaac's arms as she had been for 43 years, she smiled, because she knew, with absolute certainty, that their love would endure beyond their lifetimes. It would live on in their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. It would be told as a story of hope and courage and the transformative power of love. The cowboy had married her on the church steps that day, and it had changed everything. For both of them, for their family, for everyone whose lives they touched. It was a love story for the ages, born in the Wild West, tested by time, and proven true through 4 decades of devotion. And it was perfect.